Hello and welcome back to some World of Tanks. Today we're going to be taking a first look at an upcoming Tier 8 American premium medium tank. It's going to be the AAT60. This thing looks pretty interesting, looks very modern as you can see from the picture here. So let's have a look at this thing's base statistics, then compare it to some tanks that are already in the game, have a look at its armor model, and then I'll let you know my final opinions on this tank and a little bit of speculation on where I think it may appear. Let's get into it. So, to start off with, here are its base statistics. Get into it straight away. DPM, 2301, kind of quite nice actually. It's going to be on the good to upper end of DPM for Tier 8 medium tanks. Can't complain. 320 Alpha, pretty average, nothing special right there. Base penetration of 230. Kind of low, but it's not as bad as some tanks, especially some that we are going to compare it to in a little bit. Its gold penetration is heat, and off the top of my head, I think it's 285 millimeters, which is very nice. That's pretty alright heat pen. It's not, at the top end, but it's, average to good kind of heat pen for tier 8. Aim time, very good. 1.92 seconds. That's pretty snappy. Dispersion, 0.34, pretty bang average, 0.34 is pretty bang average, middle of the road. It's not as good as some tanks, but it's definitely not terrible. This thing carries plenty of ammo, don't worry about that. Speed. This tank's a little bit lacking, it's quite slow, quite sluggish. 44 forwards, but a little bit of a feature. It goes exactly half the speed as it goes forwards, backwards. Kind of a cool feature, I guess. 44 forwards, 22 in reverse. Probably run a turbo on this thing. Yeah, especially just to push it up a little bit. This thing could be going 27 in reverse then. That's insane. But less than me rambling, this thing has decent power to weight ratio, so it is going to be able to maintain its speed, but it's not got incredible power to weight ratio, so it is going to be a bit slower on soft terrain especially, but is what it is. You can definitely work around that. Has great gun depression of 10 degrees. Can't complain with that. It's an American tank at the end of the day. Pretty much all of them have 10 degrees of gun depression. Armor-wise, this thing is a bit funky. It looks a bit funky, so it has funky armor. We'll look at its armor model later, and you'll see what I mean. Must note, actually, as well, this thing has funky gun depression angles. It's 10 degrees at the front, but not at the sides. I'll show you, don't worry. But armor-wise, 70 flat initial armor of the hull. That's pretty poor, but once again, it's a bit funky, so don't take that as gospel. 150 millimeters for the turret, same again. HP-wise, this thing has a pretty nice HP pool of 1400. It's going to be able to trade quite nicely. It's quite slow. This thing's all, as we said, it's quite slow, a lot of HP, decent-ish gun, decent DPM. This thing is going to be kind of a pseudo-heavy, light-heavy, heavy-medium kind of brawler. That's kind of going to be this thing's gameplay style, I feel. But it has decent camo. 15% camo is quite nice. This thing's quite low profile, which will help with that. And it has 390 meters view range, so it is going to be able to spot quite reliably for itself. But let's compare this tank now to some tanks that are already in the game. So let's get right into it. So we're going to be comparing the AAT60 with the CS52 LIS and the Lanson C today. DPM, we'll get straight into it basically. DPM, better than the LIS and the Lanson. 2301 compared to 2086 for the LIS and 2176 for the Lanson. Quite nice. Alpha, same across the board, 320. It's nice, but as I said, pretty average. Dispersion, it's better. 0.34 compared to 0.35 for the LIS and 0.36 for the Lanson. That's kind of nice, but they are kind of known as not incredible snipers, even though you do have to play some of them as snipers. So this thing is going to have relatively okay gun handling, especially that aim time is lovely. 1.92 seconds aim time is really nice. Anything less than 2 seconds, I feel, is really nice nowadays. But that's when compared to the LIS's 2.21 and the Lanson's 2.4, it looks incredible. But 1.92 is not incredible, but it's good. We'll put it that way. Speed forwards, it's slower than the LIS and the Lanson, which are no slouchers, but 44 is, when you start to drop below 45, that's when you start to feel it, I feel. But speed-wise, it is best in class, 22 versus 20 across the board for the Lys and the Lancer. It has the most HP, which is kind of nice. 1400 compared to the 1300 for this and 1350 for the Lancer. So I feel you could maybe get away without running a hardening on this thing, but I still would. You know, I'd probably, if I was, you know, when this thing comes out, pick it up, I'd probably still run a hardening turbo rammer, but you could even maybe drop the hardening for V-stabs potentially. But depends what matchup you get in. Don't forget you do have 2 setups for the field mods. View range, better than the Lys and the Lancer, 390 meters for a tank that's quite slow is kind of a bit odd. But once again, it's low profile, so that will help. Sorry, bit odd actually, because low profile normally has worse view range, so that's a bit odd, but oh well, ignore it. Hull armor, 70 compared to 80 compared to 60, so literally smack bang in the middle between the Lys and the Lancer. You know, if any of you have played the Lys, you'll know it's hull armor is... It will bounce a few things when angled and at some funky gun depression angles, but it's not reliable. This thing's probably going to be pretty similar, and the Lancer just doesn't bounce anything, so it's going to kind of fit in between those. Turret armor, much better than the Lancer, which doesn't bounce anything, but it's worse than the Lys's, which does, you know, pull off a few miracle bouncers, especially against tier 6, tier 7 tanks. Probably not as much on tier 8. This thing's going to be pretty similar, but as I said, we'll look at the armor model to get more details on that in a minute. Penetration-wise, this thing has better than the Lys and the Lancer in terms of standard penetration. 220 APCR compared to 208 AP and 208 AP for the Lancer. That's nice. Gold penetration, 285 millimeters. Heat. Heat is just nice to have as gold, especially at tier 8, I feel, for a medium tank. Just feels quite reliable, especially when you're having to fight upper tier or you're having to fight heavily armored tanks. It just feels a bit more reliable. But 285 heat compared to 252 millimeters APCR and 242, that's a spelling mistake by me, 242 APCR for the Lancer, not 342. That would be insane. But gun depression, -10, -7, -10, so it's got good gun depression. The Lys is -7, that's still workable, but -10, you can work a lot more different positions. Most cooldowns in the game work really well for -10, but this thing doesn't have incredible turret armor as it looks, so maybe it won't be a cooldown kind of brawler. But we'll find out now, because we can have a look at the armor model on tanks.gg. Well, as you can see, there's a lot of green. For, you know, a slow medium, you'd think, you know, that armor, even though it says it's pretty poor, maybe it'd have some funky angling, and it kind of does. So we'll put this thing on visual, first of all, so we can get a little bit more of an idea of what this tank looks like. It looks quite modern, I feel. It looks kind of similar to the Italian Progetto Heavy that we have in the game already. That's probably its closest comparison I have. I think it looks quite cool. But armor-wise, not as good. It's pretty poor frontally. But gun depression-wise is when this thing's turret armor especially gets interesting. Because it has no cupola. And it's quite a small profile. So imagine the ridge is kind of sat like this. So imagine the top of the effective armor box is the ridge. You can only really see the gun, the mantler, to the little bit of the cheeks. Yes, this is all going to be pennable, but this thing has decent reverse speed, so peek up. That's kind of going to be how I feel this tank plays. And that might be a bit frustrating. It has decent upper hull armor at this angle, so, you know, it does have a bar here right underneath the gun and to the left and the right, like some kind of like shoulders, which are going to be pennable, but it's interesting. Its roof will probably be overmatchable by high alpha stuff, especially heat is going to, you know, wreak havoc on this thing's turrets. You know, pretty much the entire thing becomes green when you fight a decent heat pen. But this thing has decent-ish armor for a medium. It's not incredible, but it's not terrible. But where this thing's interesting in terms of its gun depression, as I mentioned, is, okay, over the front, over the tracks, still got tan, you know, we're getting over the side, and, ooh, let's actually put it on visual so we can see it a bit better. This thing's got like a kind of circle, kind of similar to the Concept 1, actually. Yeah. Over the side and rear, this thing has 0 degrees of gun depression. Thankfully, it's quite a low-profile tank, so it's not going to have to always depress its gun behind itself. But stuff like a low-profile light tank, like an ELC LT432, yeah, you're going to be able to sneak behind this tank, and it's going to not be able to do anything about it because it's got no gun depression over the rear. Because, yeah, the gun is fixed into the turret, so as you can see, the gun kind of moves independently from the turret, like that. So over the rear and over the extreme sides, no gun depression. So do bear that in mind if you're trying to play this tank. But over the front, you've still got 10. Over the tracks, you've still got 10. They're the most important angles. But yeah, it's not got the best gun depression in that sense that, you know, it doesn't have it over the rear. This thing can't really side scrape because of its cheek. It's just pennable. It's really weak as well, actually. You know, it's 70mm in places, 100 in others. And its whole frontal hull is there. You can maybe do some kind of baiting with just showing this, but you've got to be really careful about this kind of shoulder. It has a cupola that is very pennable. You know, 50mm. It can probably almost pen itself with its own HE in its cupola, which is always interesting. But this thing has okay-ish armor for a medium, but it's not incredible. It's going to be penned by itself very reliably, so do bear that in mind. So, let's go on to the conclusion, my opinions of this tank, and a little bit of speculation where I think it may pop up. So, the AAT60, the Super Test Tier 8 Premium American Medium Tank. This tank looks okay. It's definitely not going to be going in and I'm going, ooh, that looks kind of good. But it also doesn't look terrible. It looks like it's going to be bang average. It looks like the kind of tanks we've had recently released through loot boxes. Pretty average tanks, don't really stand out that much. They kind of just do their own thing. They kind of will very quickly slip into insignificance. Tanks like the Objects 274A or the 247A, I can't even remember the name because I don't see any of them nowadays. Those kind of tanks. It's going to be okay. It has decent gun, it has decent DPM, it's not that slow, but it's just nothing special. And I applaud Wargaming for, you know, releasing Tier 8 premiums or looking to release Tier 8 premiums, which are not going to be stupidly overpowered because that's how it should be. People should want to pick it up because they go, oh, it looks cool, or oh, that looks like it might be quite fun. But for me, I won't be picking it up. I don't see much special in it myself. It looks funky, it looks like it may be a little bit interesting, and if I did pick it up randomly through a loot box that I got for free, I'd be like, oh, cool, I'll give it a try. But probably as we will see this thing in some loot boxes, whether it be into the summer months, we'll probably get a loot box event, or whether it be all the way in, you know, Halloween area where, you know, we get the loot boxes for the Waffenträger event. God knows when we may see this tank. We really don't. But nothing really special. That's my kind of conclusion. But if you did enjoy today's video, don't forget to like, comment, and subscribe, and use that comment section down below and let me know what you think of this tank, and let's speculate together on where this tank might pop up. And I'll see you in the next one. Bye!